85% of GDP. Our national debt as of 2023 is $110 billion. The interest payments on our national debt increased from 3.5 billion to 7.5 billion, which is more than the combined allocation for health, education, and agriculture. Yahya Jammeh, in all his madness, in 22 years, left us with a national debt of 48 billion. While President Barrow, who claims to be a man of austerity, who claims to be a man came to calm down, on excess on wastages, has increased our debt to 62 billion by 62 billion in 7 years. And this, of course, has brought up our national debt to the global figure of $110 billion. Our balance of payments and terms of trade are all negative. The official rate of inflation is said to be 18%, but the market tells us that the rate of inflation is much higher than 18%. Ordinary Gambians are struggling to make ends meet. Those of you who want to set up in that market and face the butcher or the fishmonger or the vegetable vendor would know that really the rate of inflation is far above 18%. Those of us whose pockets are affected know that. But government, and its desire to mislead the Gambian people, pegs the inflation rate at 18%, which is really a misleading. Travel for 2024 is increased from 40 million to $60 million. The cost of our ministers, our directors, our president, the cost of their travels abroad is increased from 40 million to 60 million. And indeed, the cost of the medical treatment for the few privileged people has also been increased from 40 million to 60 million. You and I, Brazzaville, are not catered for in this amount, in this allocation. This is for the ministers, the spouses, and indeed those who are well connected to them to foot their medical bills abroad. Now, the specific allocations to the offices of the president is 872.6 million. Foreign affairs is 1.7 billion. Finance and economic affairs, 2.05 billion. Infrastructure, 2.6 billion. Youth and sports, 122 million, 0.3. Basic education, 2 billion. Secondary education, 2 billion. Minister of Health, 2.3 billion. Interior, 1.58 billion. Tourism, 45.1 million. It's obvious from these allocations that government is placing priorities on areas that do not deserve that sort of attention. $872.6 million is allocated to the President's office. For what purpose? We all know that the President's office is probably the least productive sector of the economy of this country. The least productive sector of this country. In fact, it is the sector where gossips is the center of gossips. And how can anybody in his right mind put $872.6 million to such a subject? As compared to youth and sports, which is only 122.3 million. No wonder the GFF is having hand in hand going around seeking donations to finance the AFCON, the AFCON campaign. The resources that are allocated to office, like Office of the President, better part of that should have been given to the Ministry of Youth and Sport, particularly when we already know that this year Gambia Football Federation or the Scorpions will be embarking on a campaign which is very expensive, a campaign to bring us honor, a campaign to ensure that our country is put on the map of the world through our youth. But no, that is not their priority. Their priority is really to put money into a sector which misuses those funds for purposes that are not for the promotion of the welfare of the people of Gambia, but for the promotion of the welfare of specific individuals. And indeed, that some of these funds are used for purposes that are completely unconnected to government activities. So you can see how the misallocations are, and this is what is going to make the year 2024 another year of misfortune, another year of disaster for the Gambian people. 2023 really was a year that Gambians had hoped that our democratization process would have really taken steps, concrete steps, that would convince everyone that really Gambia is ready for a new constitution. The security of our electoral system, our constitution, the draft constitution, remains in coma. And what means I do not know, whether it's in the President's office or it's in the Minister of Justice, but it's in a state of coma and needs to be resuscitated. And there are absolutely no concrete steps have been taken to ensure that this is done. And the constitution has to be put in place so that the other legal parameters, other legal reforms can really properly follow. The Elections Act ought to have really been an appendage to the elections, to the Constitution, because the Constitution should have provided the platform, the foundation for the Elections Act. That is also gathering dust somewhere in the National Assembly, and nothing is being done about it. The institutional reforms that we had envisaged is certainly not taking place, and is much talked about security sector's reform has been more of lip service than real action. Every time we are told that steps have been taken to ensure that proper reform of the security sector is carried out, but none concrete step has really been taken which could convince any Gambian that this particular sector, as important as it is, has been given the needed reform it deserves. Gentlemen of the press, I've referred to 2023 as a disaster, a year of misfortune. Our country is facing a national disaster with regard to the backway and irregular migration. Thousands of our youth from across the country and in every community are taking the backway because they desperately need to make a decent and honest living to support their families. A national disaster should therefore be declared with a clearly articulated strategy to address irregular migration and to create youth employment and empowerment. Few months ago, the number of Gambian youths who perished in the Mediterranean Sea due to the careless policies of this government, the number is very frightening. Khartoum, the community of Khartoum alone, registered 27 young people who lost their lives just from one community. Jambu registered 41 youths, and Bakau registered 21 youths who lost their lives. These are just examples, samples taken from 3 communities. We had disasters in the Yomis, people from Yomis, in other parts of the country. And indeed, all these young people have lost hope in the country. They have thought that with a change of government, their condition would improve, that employment would be created, if not direct employment by the government, but then conditions will be created which will really make it easier for them to pick up employment, either self-employment or employment in the service or employment in other places. And with regards to the state or trust our democracy, the following democratic principles have been eroded due to weaponization of state institutions against political opponents. I am sure that you ladies and gentlemen of the press are aware and in fact are witnesses to how the state is weaponizing institutions in order to thwart our democratic process. Measures have been taken to silence opponents. The press have been threatened in the past year, all in a bid to silence them. And the press is a very important component, important pillars, important agents in the promotion of democracy, in the creation of democracy in any country. Where you have a free press, you can be sure that you can have a true democracy. But alas, this is not what is really happening in the country. And I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen of the press, you must have read in your own medium that it is proposed to increase the nomination fees for presidential candidates from its current amount to $1 million for $1 million for any candidate. You may recall that in 2015 or thereabout, Yahya Jammeh also made such a proposal, and the entire political class, including those in government today, raised hell against it. That in fact, that was employed by Jammeh to keep out potential opponents, because it will be reducing participation in the presidential election, will be reducing only to the level of those who are rich, those who can offer better ideas, those who can be better leaders in the country, because of their weak financial condition, cannot afford the $1 million. We all cried against it, and I think it was then that Yahya Jammeh decided to reduce it from 1 million to 500,000. This government that has said it wants to ensure that there's true democracy, this government that says that all those legislations by Ajame were anti-democratic. We are only measures to muzzle the growth of political power or to give opportunity to other political parties or other political contenders to seek for the office of the president, can now turn around and really want to implement such a measure that is an antithesis of what really this government has stood for. It's also a sign or a step towards Muslim democracy, towards curtailing the ability of Gambians to really partake in presidential elections. Gentlemen of the press, you can be sure that when I condemn this, I'm not doing so for UDP because UDP has the money to pay $1 million for its candidates. So it's not for us. It's for others who really are not in a position to do so. The independent candidates who may not be in a position to do so. You cannot just shut them out because you feel that the only way you can advance the democratization, and when I say this is DE, is DE democratization, you know, not democratization, but you really want to backslide our democracy into a situation that really that's really not within the contemplation of the Gambian people. There is lack of respect for the rule of law by the government. And when I say by the government, I mean not by the government, either the central government, the executive itself, or its agencies, such as the security. We've now seen that the Ajame style of police operation has really reared its head, and indeed, it is one that has taken center stage. Fridays are the days that are assigned for the arrest of alleged suspects who have committed crimes. Fridays are the days that are assigned for doing that. So that Saturday and Sunday, they can be kept in custody, and while the clock takes the minutes, for them to clock the 72 hours before any action is done. That was the Ajame style of doing things. That is the dictator style of doing things, and that is why I do not hesitate to say that Adama Barrow is gradually becoming a dictator in this country. And these are the proofs of it. And if anybody thinks that I'm wrong, please engage me and ask me to give you the evidence, and I'll give you the evidence. Yes, Barrow is gradually becoming a dictator in this country. The diversity, equity, and inclusion are essential democratic principles that aim to promote fairness, equal opportunities, and respect for all individuals, regardless of their background or identity and perspectives. These principles are about creating a more just and inclusive society. The near insults, the disrespect that is made to some members of the opposition just confirms these principles that I'm saying, because they are unwilling to accept that diversity, they are unwilling to accept differing views, and because of that, treatments are being made out of wisdom that they do not deserve. The opposition is denied constantly access to the national media. But we see when some group of NPP non-entities organize a non-event, and when I say non-event, I mean a non-event that's not government. You find full GRTS there in their full gear, with more than the number of people, more than the number of cameras that are needed for the occasion. When opposition parties, particularly UDP, holds events of a national nature where they are requested to be, they do not show up. And that is contravention of the Constitution. And indeed, it was one of the issues that Darboe found as a grouse with the Gambia administration, that you cannot really run a true democratic state when others are excluded from the use of state resources. That unequal treatment is probably becoming the hallmark of this government. The nexus of rampant corruption, lack of transparency and accountability, the drug menace, and interference in the operation of area councils and municipalities are a direct threat to our democracy. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, let me say that the Auditor General's report, or reports from the Auditor General, which some uninformed people, some uneducated people consider as opinion, shows the level of corruption in this country. That it is cankerworm that is destroying the fabric of our society. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate, for once, the National Assembly for at least passing the anti-corruption bill into law that has dragged for more than 4 or 5 years. I want to congratulate them for doing that. But also, let there be the political will on the part of the executive to implement the Anti-Corruption Act to its letter. There should be no sacred cows. There should be no selective investigation of corrupt practices. It should go right across the board. And indeed, people who are suspected of harboring illicit gains, illicit proceeds of corrupt practices should really also be made to face the full force of the law. Otherwise, the passing of the anti-corruption or the passing of the anti-corruption bill into act will just be a mere facade. It will be a mere window dressing. It will not be a real drive against the fight against. It will not be a real drive against the fight against corruption. And I challenge the government. That the 750,000 dollars, which I hear the guys called Nakodo, things should be certainly a prime candidate for investigation before this anti-corruption tribunal that should be set up. Our country has lost respect and credibility in the eyes of the world because this country has been turned into the transit route for drug and drug dealers. How many tons of cocaine, how many tons of drugs are confiscated or are impounded? And yet, we have not heard of any successful prosecution of any of those people that have been arrested. So, take the chance, bring your drugs into the Gambia, to have it transited wherever you want to, and if you are caught, we'll go underground and stop any prosecution by sculpting the evidence that the prosecutor needed or the law enforcement needed to put before the court. I was amazed when I heard an audio where someone who is alleged to be an imam, who calls himself an imam, and indeed who is known to be close to the corridors of power, confessing that he has Taliban, he does not need money from anybody. But he has Taliban in Europe who are drug dealers. They give him money. That person is certainly should have been arrested by the drug law enforcement agency for aiding and abetting drug dealers. Because whatever he does, whether spiritually or otherwise, he is aiding and abetting drug dealers, and that is why he is being given money. So the drug winners is really very close to the corridors of power. Because this particular imam, I know personally, and I know that he has undertaken several errands, so-called religious errands, on behalf of people who today are really in control of the government machinery of this country. So, if you can have the threat that is exposed by drug traffickers in this country will certainly not be seriously handled by the powers that should have handled it. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, I think everybody wants to have free movement of vehicles on our roads, free movements of bicycles, and indeed unimpeded movements of pedestrians, of pedestrians, who will not be put in fear of being knocked down by vehicles, so that the road path, the footpath, would be cleared of all obstacles. That is indeed expected to be done by any responsible authority. But why do you have to demolish structures that have absolutely no bearing on the roads, that have no obstruction to the road? In fact, why destroy things that have been put in places to stop rain getting to shops, or really serve as canopy, so that it can be a rain breaker, can be wind breaker, and they do not have anything to do with the traffic on the roads. This, I think, is what has been wrong with this exercise. That we know everywhere in the world, beautification of cities, beautification of neighborhoods. People grow flowers and so forth outside of their homes in order to beautify the places. I am yet to be indicated, but I have not seen anywhere in the Fiscal Plan and Development Act that says that you cannot really beautify the frontage of your property. I have not seen it, although I heard someone say that you have to get a permit for it. And I certainly want to be educated, because we are not technicians. We looked at the law and we didn't find it in the law, but maybe there's somewhere in your notes or directives that says you cannot do that. So let us do this road clearance with a human face. Let us not deprive these poor women. Let us not deprive these young men who have their car wash facilities around on the roadside. Let us allow them to carry out this exercise so that they will not venture on the back way. If you move out those young people who have their car washing facilities on the road, You move them away, where do they go? You certainly cannot have a car wash inside your father's compound. And indeed, all these people come from afar and they convert in places to really undertake these to carry out these decent earning activities so that they can live a decent life, an honorable life, a life that is free of criminality, a life that will not really spur them to go and find greener pasture elsewhere. But the government has to help them. Indeed, what I would have expected the government to do was to organize these young men and women, organize them in locations. You allocate them land and give them all the facilities so that they could carry out their car washing activities and earn decent living. And of course, that will be a way of employing young people. And ladies and gentlemen, the secrecy and lack of transparency in the recycling of our strategic national asset, such as, of course, the Trans-Gambia Bridge, the Gambia Ports Authority, and the airport, certainly should halt. This is a government that condemned Air German government for lacking in transparency. It should now be really the principal agent for transparency in this country. Yet, whatever they do with respect to our national assets have not been done with any degree of trust. The minister to go to the National Assembly and, excuse my word, and regurgitate what he has stated in a press interview. Documentary evidence should be made available to lawmakers so that they can really examine the document and say whether or not what was being done was in the best interest of the country, and that the giving away of this asset will not in fact compromise our national security, because every aspect, all these institutions, the Gambia Ports Authority, the airport, their operations have national security elements. There should be national security concerns. You cannot really give our airport to people who really are not responsible for managing the security affairs of this country, and who only interest in those assets are really the profits that they can make. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, this year is not going to be different from the year 2024, 2023. This year probably will be worse than 2023, because this government has taken it upon itself not to care for what people say. This government that prices itself to say that we have the power, we have the authority to do what we want to do, and we will do it. A government that says nobody can stop us from doing what we want to do has nothing in store for you but misfortune and disaster, because they will be reckless in their thinking, they will be reckless in their actions, believing that nobody on the surface of this earth can really stop them from doing what they want to do. A government that you elected, a government to whom you ceded your power, your sovereignty, and asked them to be your agents in the exercise of your delegated power, can turn around to you and tell you I am as powerful as Yahya Jammeh, in fact, more powerful than Yahya Jammeh, because apart from all the security apparatuses that Yahya Jammeh had, I also have the economic. Such a government certainly will do things without regard to without regard to your views. And indeed, we've seen it happen in the way that they have treated the area council, the municipalities. And indeed, that is what this government will continue to do, to stifle the aspirations of the Gambian people, to stifle the wishes and desires of the Gambian people, and all that in order to self-perpetuate. But I think all of us should really commence our drive, should now commence our efforts, serious efforts, to terminating this government's existence in 2026. It must start now, and we cannot postpone it. We cannot wait until 2026 and start on that exercise. It has to be done now. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, I thank you for your attention, and I hope my ramblings make any sense to you. Thank you very much.
And the president is Louis have mentioned that he's got a commitment to bring that constitution. But will you in passing, or will you support any idea when some sections in the draft constitution that was passed by members of the Constitutional Commission submitted when it is added? Will you support that constitution?
If the constitution is altered?
Yes, we will understand. Will you support that idea? Will you passing, or will you call for amendment to
Let me say, I'm not sure how much committed the president is to the introduction of the draft constitution. This president has been talking about his commitment to the Gambia having a new constitution. And yet, we saw how he manipulated it. We saw how he got his political advisor to go and kill Fatu, to say that this constitution is a bad constitution, this draft constitution is a bad constitution. We are going to make sure that it does not survive. We are going to kick it out. Siakajata did so against Fatu. And he was speaking with full authority and with President Adamaboro in the knowledge of it. And he was never reprimanded. So that shows that, when they talk of having a new constitution, it's just mere lip service. It's not something that they really mean. And when the constitution got into the National Assembly, the entire UDP membership in the National Assembly voted for it. Barrow, his political allies in the National Assembly, all voted against it and defeated the constitution. And prior to that, I, on the eve of the introduction of that constitution in the National Assembly, I went on air, appealed to everybody, appealed to members of the National Assembly to really vote for this constitution, because this was what we had promised to the Gambian people. We had been yearning for electoral reform. We had been yearning for reforms of our institutions, of our laws. And the fundamental law that will provide the foundation for that, we must provide with that law. We must really make sure that it passes the National Assembly. We have been committed, and we continue to be committed to having a new constitution for the Gambia. But we will not accept. I have made this clear once, not twice. Even the national facilitators, I made it quite clear to them that not a single section of that draft constitution must be omitted from it when it comes to National Assembly. It has to come to National Assembly, and whatever changes are going to take place will take place in the National Assembly, but we are not accepting any changes by the government or any other person outside of the National Assembly. If they do, we will vote against it. We want the Gambian constitution that the Gambian people were sensitized from. The constitution, the draft on which we spent $116 million, let it come to the National Assembly. And in the National Assembly, then whatever negotiations will be done by our elected representatives, not few members of the executive who to sit outside and then come with a draft. We will not accept it. I'll make that clear, and I'm not ashamed to really make that statement. I'll continue to make that statement.
Yes. Gentlemen, yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Darboe. My wife is If I found you clearly when we government attempt to influence the president, registration recovery fee from so $1 million, right?
Sorry?
I mean, if I had it,
Yeah, denomination fees.
yeah. In attempting for the increase to $1 million, is this a good step towards all political parties? And is it a way of
One of the things for even $1 million last time actually come, or in the foreign account, actually, we didn't go to the nomination of the right. And those are the first for this book, but I'm going to do that actually. Masapula from the group of money, please you never get to someone else. You don't do that for you.
Really, what do come do when I look up for political a bamboo, temperamento, Mamira Nyanto Dol Jabila, so Namira the other people, Zobula more dolia. To the Bambari, I mean, I'm told you, Mamma is but I'm told you, what a civil servant, public servant, Emmanuel political. Well, that's all. Simen for no, hello, Simen for no, Carola, Mohammed, Italy, Jube, Italy, Jubela, in conscience tema, whether they make a for Silam for Silate. Mampare is a police engage down it, Mampare Falama, maybe at the other cook is going to Konodoya Wanya, but we do Sabula Wanya. About this $1 million. Among a good may have got lotally, could a man of a mirror on Kono, Faske Famanya Nakela. But the Bakumas Nakabisa and Kafkamanya Nakela, the Bablago, Ne Atara Kafro Bekela, nomination fees. Kapabulta Dulkata will come, Namara war is fair enough. But million killing, more the Kerano, Ya Jamana Jamanola, more the Kumoria Jamanola, Alapto is not Alapto Mantorala, Alapto Notella, saying, there will be change of government or change of system. May I look out? Bangosita Manu, Alhalola, Memu Mol Nyabokoti, Nini Nada Funti, Wajamanokono, as he came more a Tafla Kija Farakode, but as he came on a Gajakal Code, the Kavoko Fokunu, Major Jamela Jamanola, Wanyata Jimina B, Jamanakotana, or Wanyata Sanyan Kalamole, Konofita Code. But Kamemfo in Purmasapona, Marco Roque, political parties, Dunia Nato Tabejet, but America Jibere at the polls, the margin percentage mentioned. Yake was Akadi, is the Inyanta mentioned as he is at the maybe near last local government election or Niata, you read on that. I mean, you didn't have a lot of made another back about the Langa more better. Now, will stand in so number of the but Bishop Televa Jensen, Melka Chairman of the IEC, Mohaklimaba, Modamayano Kafka, IEC, about Tamandikan, Tilling Nito Nyakono, Menkanyanta, political party tema, ka sabatindi men nyanta masa kunani political party wal kena ka sabatindi wo ala report wo da men submit to the National Assembly I mentioned the Donald Kabuko masa kunani nyanta de democracy fund the democracy fund londi me anuka patu party le banko kam ici itani sorno jeto natra kavo ko be conditional mellala e be sarto mellala ni o sarto dimandi e fanasi itani sorno jeto ici ila khalol tamano in fact the constitutional review commission on men lo date ya ñine karo ken wa ta tele ñine karo ko no commence ko na ñante la kabulo ke on vol ko do political parties ko do jaman da ko ta ko at least da ko dudi da ko ta ka ñata kala de bari defan na be kala fam kana ko di choro sota ya ba ko yake ko da dudi ba filen to $50,000 ya fenke no dudi bila biro be min do de yeah, Ndela Dwaza, yeah, you're direct. No, it's all funding the activities of the political party. Kadu Bonatra Kawe, self-love, Nakakoji Tanganu, Ibulo, maybe party does not do the Mawasa, Iman Tilling, Istakotako in the month. But not Padonia Kabo left 5 computers left, the men distributed to our bureaus, yeah, order, yes, I asked about you. Lafta ni mayan ka ko do ko choros na tanambul adu nyimu ko mayan ka ko manza punda nyanda le ayamira barbao nak namira ya nyina ka ko na nyu ko do di la be jorande di la jawala pura yi kele itani to zan na kala ba yuri bi masu kuna ne tan na jeto asilo nyen pat mo bes di la ko democracy fund del ba lon la le pour political parties yol meya sakos timandi fund it can benefit from it.
Yes, sir. Gentleman in white shirt.
I'm swearing. But Gambians like asking this question. Usually, don't know if you have plans of touching the base.
Sime mwa wala kabo ko UDP ko di entale yen tabende akela nyaton ko de ko jandi be nyaton ko fo jandi to ko do be sila ko to nyaton ko o do ko mole ke kan and kawo ko lafta be nyi kala femme ya no ka fa mansi mai fa ya ko nyi mangela soniyati ko man ko ka fa man ko ka fa ebe fem fola me ya no ka ko I start to have hypothetical situation mamira ina fasko the more nyata jin don na ka ko human beings they are not permanent, they are transient or musikelale honey man transit it makes you ineffective, it makes you ineffectual ni kuranda you become ineffectual ni fata. So why should I be telling people Kabako Bilafta can selection contest? Demado for Janis in the better like that. I think those are futile from God. Memo for the Kabako Dogo member would be as left the party, Bodo for the back end. I don't become a coke and about the bullet. The content of coke. Sama member Kala Sama for election of my family. Number 2, the election was it. Yeah, maybe just you never announced that. Member Kela, you will be a candidate. So wait for that. In the meantime, I'm campaigning for people to join UDP. I'm campaigning for people to abandon other parties and come and join UDP, so that the 2026 UDP will form the government in this country. What am I doing?
Whatever the fuck sound.
But not UDP,
Just a little rectification for you. And Madon told to the gentleman Jao, and I still get folk like on there. The National Assembly Self Committee on Electoral Matters, the order of the proposal is a recommendation. I hope that it will not be endorsed by the rest of the members of the National Assembly. Nebune President Adam Barrow, Moko propose, Bama President Barrow propose, Moko propose. Why not? Munge proposal Siolo, Munge held Jamano President Adam Barrow. President Adam Barrow Minga Hamne, more Tahawam. In 2016, in fact 2015, we bokk UDP. Bokk na ci wax ne Yaya Jammeh nim increase nomination fees from 10,000 to 1 million was unrealistic. It was all done pour muna néewal doole other political parties or xañ leen opportunity pour ñu muna participate in the presidential elections. Waaye ci jamono nag loolu warta am te xëy na ni may wax ni ena moom itam mu ngi xalaatee noonu ne warta am waaye nag na des nag su demee ci néegi député yi ñu approve ko te man naa xam naa ne opposition elements yi ñoom dañ ko oppose waaye suñu nee ni ñoom suñ ko approuvé kon nga xam ne lii Adama Barrow bokk na ci tooga bi so day def National Assembly bi rek pour yàgga ko foofu so loolu laa li ko wala waaye pour bokk ak yeneen political parties nag in 2006, I found it's too early for the work about alliances. Manlima for mine, every political parties, they go sabopane, more now win elections on my own. I think so. Every political party, then go guy up. Why not? Lord, what data not ne do muna boka Kenya. Pour gain boka fight an election. We have always been open to alliances, and if again in 2006 we find it necessary to go into an alliance, certainly never have, because more gonna dole than individual defense. So Lord and the program for just a question.
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon. When you talk about UDP, Stand Farm to projected into that constitution, the bills brought before National Assembly and changes are made outside the National Assembly. Knowing that some members who participated in voting against this constitution are still in the National Assembly, are you confident that if any changes that are being suggested to be made in the Parliament, are you confident that these honorable members will do justice in terms of making amendments in this constitution that is considered to be important?
And I don't understand the.
I mean, you say
Yeah.
that Barrow, someone asked me a question, Barrow says the constitution will be made back, and then you say if there is amendment or changes to be made, UDP stand firm, it will be done in the National Assembly. And if it's done outside the National Assembly, you will instruct members of the League to vote against, and you will advocate for people to vote against. My question is now, are you confident that bringing it back to the National Assembly for the necessary changes of the League will be done according to how we feel?
Well, if it's brought to the National Assembly without any changes will be made in the National Assembly, I think will be determined by the members of the National Assembly. I cannot sit here and make a commitment for them. They are the ones who are going to look at that law, and they are the ones who will really decide whether or not they want to effect any amendments to it or not. So I cannot really make any commitment to say that they will really make changes to it because I do not sit in the National Assembly. But what I say is that, the reasonable expectation of the Gambian people, our party will always stand for that in the National Assembly when it comes to passing of any legislation, including the Constitution of the Gambia.
Sorry, my question is, are you confident that they will do justice? to those things.
Well, this is what I'm saying, that I do not want to make any commitment on them. And I would expect that the members of the National Assembly are in the National Assembly to really attend to the affairs of the Gambian people. Dispassionately, they are in the National Assembly ready to do justice to whatever is brought before them. And that is what I expect them to do. But I cannot tell you that this is what they will do. Because if they decide to do something that you probably think has been the monumental injustice to that constitution, then I would have been proved wrong. Okay? So I think, let's leave it go to the National Assembly, and if any changes are going to be done, let it be done in National Assembly. And if the National Assembly feels that there should be no changes, then let the bill be passed and we go to a referendum.
Any more questions? So I also wanted to ask a question on the party. So,
Well, question of many UDP UDP to extend the franchise to the Gambian citizens, and because you cannot accept that community as the 8th region of the Gambia, an 8th region that contributes at least 23% GDP. You cannot really legitimately shut them out from the process of deciding who should be in charge of the affairs of the Gambia. It's not fair. I want to love to allow both President gentlemen and former President are committed to having a new constitution. We hope that will happen, so that the constitution may specifically mentions diaspora voting as a schedule. But I also want to think that apart from the constitution, the case of Darboe versus the Attorney General has put beyond doubt whether you consider or not the constitution. Under the current constitution, Gambians can vote and should vote in diaspora. So it is only for the IEC, with that judgment in their hand, and also relying on Section 124 of the Elections Act, Natara, Ibenu, Akmen, Nanate, Moponikedo. Then on the current Section 124 of the Elections Act to really extend the franchise to diaspora. The law is there. Supreme Court has decided. They decided in the case of Bakar Bujadam. It's a question of just implementing the orders of that court, and also implementing or taking advantage of Section 124 of the Elections Act, which provides that the IEC should make regulations for the registration of Gambian nationals abroad for the purpose of elections. So I'm dead. But I think it's the political will. Just as Yahya lacked the political will, I'm not sure, but maybe Barrow also lacked this political will, because I don't know how to Spain. Kabuka for Spain now, video about Spain, Babu for Spain, Konda Badaka Kuramboni, and then Badaka Mama Paraboni. So, welcome you. But I can assure you, Kafako, we hope we don't get to that. But even if you do, and there is problem of having the constitutional provision, and then we can rely on other laws other than the constitution to ensure that the people of the diaspora, they are enfranchised so that they can really vote at the presidential election. What for me, when we can some deep thinking is by the elections to the National Assembly, when you have 53. So far, when you have 53 constituencies, and this may likely increase to, maybe 60 or 63, may likely do so. Whether you can have the ballot boxes for all those 53 constituencies in the diaspora to vote, that is about for the presidential campaign. There's absolutely, for me, there's absolutely no problem. We should have done so long ago. In fact, if Bishop Terewa Johnson was alive, it would have been done the James time. I have no doubt about that. Because he had determination, he had the idea, and he was willing to do so. And he was willing to tap resources to fund the registration of Gambians in diaspora. He was so good.
We'll take the last question. Gentleman, in the last question.
In his New Year message, the president, his New Year message, he mentioned many things that the country has done in the past year. Among many things, except for corruption, in which he very mentioned insecurity. Corruption being one of the enemies of our country at this age. How disappointed is your party, seeing that the government is not enough against corruption?
Well, I think I have stated that in this briefing with you, that we are determined to fight corruption, and that a UDP government will certainly not treat incidents of corruption the manner in which the current government is handling them. In fact, I had on various occasions challenged the government to use the anti-corruption law that was in the statute book that was passed in 2012. It may have its deficiencies, but that notwithstanding, there is a law, and it's for you to really implement that law. Take the necessary action if you are really serious in fighting corruption. Take all the necessary steps so that people will see that you are really serious in fighting against corruption. You don't have to say, I have to wait for the anti-corruption bill that before national to pass. When you already have one, and you are repealing that, the 2012 legislation, by the current legislation. And indeed, my take on his, I don't think it's a mistake, it's not accidental, I think it's deliberate, for his commission, deliberate commission, not to mention the fight against corruption or the anti-corruption bill. I think it was deliberate. And that is why I said, while I applaud the National Assembly member for passing the legislation, I hope there will be the political will to really see to its implementation. So, since you notice that the president himself has not mentioned it, he's not given any priority. So let us see what he does after the National Assembly have done their job, what he does with the anti-corruption bill. And I hope that nobody is going to cite to me that, look at the case of Khalifa Banja, look at the case of these three people. I hope nobody is going to cite to me those incidents as being the fight against corruption. I think it goes beyond that. I think it goes very close to people who are in the corridor of power, that really there are people that we should be brought forward for prosecution.
Ladies and gentlemen of this, thank you very much. very much on behalf of the Secretary General and the party leader for coming.